And there's that ooh, guys. Old friends, new friends, welcome to another edition of Rants. My name is Stefan Terringer, and you know that by now. And whatever happens on Rants is raw, it's real, and it's right at that intersection of life and business. And today we have a guest with us you're really going to enjoy. Besides, when you visit his or her facilities, locations, you also get to enjoy some awesome foods. Because we're talking to a foodie today. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit something. This guy, he is calling in from Canada today, and he's a foodpreneur. And food was something, if you've ever listened to Sebastian Maniscalco and the way he references Italian families and how they learn and teach and live with food, well, that's how this guy got introduced to food and the food business. He has really, particularly over the last 2 years, while he's working on a brand new venture, and he won't tell us, even not today, exactly what it is, but stay tuned on that. He's lived in the food truck business. He's lived in the restaurant business. He's done in 2019 and 2020 and 21. He's done the Zoom cook-alongs. And he certainly learned and can talk a little bit about pivoting in a business that he's very passionate about. He grew up in Toronto. He started his entrepreneurial at the young age of 26. And he calls himself a rebel without a kitchen. And I am so super excited. I'm so privileged and honored to have him here today. Chef Matt with us here right today. Matt, thank you. Welcome. I'm so excited, I got to tell you, and listeners, if you don't know this, and new friends and old friends, I'm a ex-foodie, an ex-food and beverage guy, and I'm an ex-hotel guy. That's how I ended up in the United States. So, Matt, you are the virgin, the first, the unique, awesome, very first actual chef I have on my podcast. So thank you again and welcome.
I'm blessed. I'm honored. Thank you so much, Stefan.
That's great. Matt, tell us a little bit about, is it okay if do you prefer Chef Matt or do you prefer Matt?
No, just
Doesn't matter?
Matt, just Matt. Yeah.
Listen, I've learned in kitchens and in the food business, you got to respect the chef. There's no question about it.
And to it's be honest, I think it's something like the industry. Here I am saying this. Meanwhile, when I typed in my name, I typed in Chef Matt Basile. So it was kind of like my default. But I think there's a formality to it
that's right.
It's respected in the industry and necessary in the industry. But I think chefs also take themselves a little too seriously sometimes. So we need to kind of be humans more often than not.
I love it. So Matt, you've been through quite the journey. And I think for our listeners, what would be really interesting to hear, maybe we start at present and then we talk about how we got there. I mean, the last 2 years, as we're talking here in the beginning of 2022, not quite, but the first quarter of 2022, the world is again going crazy. And I saw this funny meme of if it be a TV show, they took us from pandemic to World War III, like in one season.
Yeah.
And all my love and light sending in that part of the world, because I think that's a personal and a human tragedy we're observing life, which is heart wrenching. But also, COVID obviously has imposed restrictions, has imposed personal tragedy and hardships, personally for entrepreneurs, but also for, as entrepreneurs, we make this commitment to take care of the families of the people who work for us and with us. Yeah. Talk about that piece a little bit and kind of the journey you've been through with your businesses, your restaurants over the last 2-3 years. And I mean, God, food truck to restaurants to Zoom cook-alongs. I love it. But talk about that a little bit.
Well, I guess a few things to point out there. One, the last 3 years is where the biggest shifts have happened in my entrepreneurial career. But I've been doing this for 10 and a half, almost 11 years. Wow. So I think I'm very blessed that I had years of experience to kind of use that early energetic days of just doing things to then, when it really got got weird. Finding a way to take a step back and make decisions that were more calculated and
I love that.
does that make
I
sense,
love
right?
I
Like,
love that, and I want to hone in on that a moment. You just said a couple of words. You said I was able to take a step back and really think about it, what's next, and what's most suitable for the business, for me, for the people around
yeah,
me. But also, you said I had the experience. Talk about that a little bit because, and I want to provoke you a little bit. And you and I talked
sure.
about this before. There's a lot of chefs out there. They're amazing, amazing chefs. Their food absolutely is killer, but for the
Yeah.
life of it, they can't fucking run a business.
Yeah, or the opposite, right? Where they're they're
Yep.
they're too business and
Yep.
they've lost the passion of
Yep.
food. I
Yep.
think where I kind of sit in this unique in between bridge is that the food and cooking for people is something I would do whether it was my job or not. That's something I just love to do. In fact, that's why I left my career in advertising to pursue an entrepreneurial journey
I love
in
that.
food because it was just who I was.
So was
But
that when you
they
were
say
at the age of 26, you left
like 25, 25,
26?
26,
What
somewhere in
was the
there.
moment?
Yeah.
And I think that's always the interesting piece, right?
Yeah.
I was recently having a conversation with somebody about, well, what is passion, right? And passion is one of those
Hmm.
things. How do you define it?
Yeah.
And I think you ask 5 people, you get 55 different answers. And we
Totally.
don't just find it underneath the bed one night at 3 a.m. in the morning, but it's something that keeps us up where we're saying, oh my
Yeah.
God, I got to do this. When did you know, being in advertisement, being in that whatever we want to call it, that hamster wheel of corporate
Hmm.
advertisement, etc. And when did you know that food was your business? What happened? Was there a pivotal moment?
Well, so I'd always grown up working in the food business. So it's not like it was
Yep.
like one day I was in advertising and the next day I was like, ooh, I like sandwiches.
Yep.
Like grew up in butcher shops. I was around it for most of my life, but I never thought of it as a career. So we'll just park that for a second.
Yep.
Um, I was having a very hard time being, a millennial as we are. I'm the elder millennial now, but I was having a very hard time with being a different person at home than I was going to work every day. So I felt like I
Mm,
had to put on a role, put on a performance
I love
to
that.
be that
I love
person.
that. Wow.
And then I came home and I got to
Yep.
be myself again.
Yep.
And so that's where it started. I was like,
Yep.
I need to find a career path that is, I can wake up, I can go to a meeting in my Converse, I can say exactly what I need to say in a meeting, I can do what I need to do, I can get things done the way I need to do it, and I never
God, that's
change.
gold,
So,
man. That's gold.
so that's what drove me to say, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. Then I was like, okay, well, what am I good at? Not
That's
many
so
things
good.
to pick from. So I was like, well, food was a natural kind of evolution into that. I remember the moment when I said I need to make some changes. I remember getting into an elevator. There was three other gentlemen in the elevator. We were all wearing a blue button-up shirt, gray pants, and brown leather shoes. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, this is not how I how
That's
I
so
see my
good.
life.
That's so good.
So from that moment, I started developing a business plan to start that journey. It took a year, though, from that moment to when I actually decided I was ready to pursue it. And I remember like, and in that year there was a lot of yes, no, like back and forth. It wasn't like a defined path. There was a lot of contrasting emotions, and then very real, roadblocks that were presented to me that
Yep.
I had to problem solve around, or at least come to terms with. Was I ready to just plow right through them? But then I remember very distinctly the day that I was quitting my job um, to pursue this path.
Mhm.
There's something I went in like an hour early. I was practicing it. I and
You were
and it's
practicing to
very.
quit. You were practicing to
I was
quit.
practicing how to quit. Yeah, I was
Love
practicing how
it.
to quit.
Love it.
And my girlfriend today, who I've been with for 11 years now, almost no, definitely the entire duration of my entrepreneurial life. I remember texting with her right before I went in. I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. They're both. So I was waiting for like my two reporting managers to come in. I'm like, I'm in. Like, wish me luck. And it's something very different when you quit a job that there's nothing that you can be offered to change your mind. Like, it wasn't about more pay or more balance.
Mm,
It was a life changing decision.
I love this.
Um,
So you were committed. That was it.
that was it. And they thought everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone thought I was going to get out, go out of business immediately. They thought I was losing my mind. They were like,
I, lo-
"Why don't you think about it?"
I love this. I want to rewind for a moment because I think so
Yeah, of
many
course.
people, right? I mean, this is so timely that we're talking about this because I think people having been through the journey now, I mean, you did this long before people maybe were urged or forced or felt this inner urgency all over the globe now, right? We talk about great resignation in corporate a lot now. But I want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about, and you shared this with me, and I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. You shared this with me. Your girlfriend is an entrepreneur as well.
She
And I
is.
and
Yeah.
I want to talk about this a little bit because I think for all our listeners, what's the lesson that you've learned through the process, but also how important it is to have a champion behind you, right? Like your girlfriend, who really, really, obviously, it sounds like she was like, "Hell yeah, she's gonna do that," and I'm here for you. Whatever's gonna happen, you know, if hell grows over, I'm here. What was that like? I mean, and I know there's entrepreneurial journey. There's moments everybody's on the same page in a
Sure.
partnership, and then there's moments where you were talking about you want to make hamburgers, and they said, "Never in my life will I support you with hamburgers. Only if you make schnitzel." But the point is, talk us through this a little bit, and the lesson I want people to take away is how can they learn from you and your pivotal moment of I'm going to do this, and what can you share with people listening who may be debating that and saying I'm
Sure.
in the same spot where he was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago when he
Fair.
quit. It's been more than 3 years, obviously 10 years, a decade now.
Yeah.
um, but so if they're thinking the same thing, what are some of the things you would tell them they need to look at, they need to be self-reflective of, and maybe just consider?
Well, listen, everyone's story and everyone's perspective and everyone's situation is different. Financially, I was in a very good place to
Yeah.
make this call because I had, I was young, I had no debt, I lived at my mother's basement, so there was no there were no other factors really playing into my decision. It was literally what
Yeah.
I wanted. My girlfriend was an entrepreneur before I was, and seeing her work really motivated me to be like, yeah, I think I really believe in that same kind of mindset. And if you're around entrepreneurs, there's an energy level, there's an excitement. If you're not
Right.
excited when you're starting something new, then you shouldn't be doing it because
Yep.
it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of energy, and you're going to make probably no money doing it. And you need to, if you are okay with all those things and you're still prepared to go forward with it, then you know what, go forward. But it requires a support system. You need to have, and I think like I don't have the quote on me, but I know there's a lot of research that suggests that the most successful entrepreneurs aren't the ones that necessarily came from a lot of money, but they're the ones that had a great support system. My parents, my girlfriend, my closest friends, all were there for me. And having that was crucial. I'm not saying you need those things in order to go forward, but it really, really helps.
I love this. Guys listening, if you're an entrepreneur, and I don't think it matters if you're somebody who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur or being an entrepreneur, you just started your journey, you're in the middle of it, because there will be moments, the thing you're going to rely most on is no longer yourself, it's the people around you. And I think that is what I'm taking away from what you're sharing with us here. I love this. I so love this. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but I
No,
thought
but
that was
you're
just
right
a
though.
really great thing.
But then to piggyback off that, it's one thing for them to be there with you when the energy is high and things are moving forward. There's going to be some
Yeah.
setbacks, and so it also takes someone with compassion and empathy to also be there for you when things aren't
Yeah.
as smooth as they could be. And there's not many industries that have experienced, COVID aside, there are not many industries quite like the food business because it's got one of the
Yeah.
highest failure rates. It's got some of the highest addiction and mental health rates. Like there's it takes a village, and it takes a
Yeah.
very very specific kind of approach. And I don't even think I necessarily like my approach in the beginning was literally outwork everybody. Literally be the hardest work. If I have no legitimacy, if I have no lineage, um, if I wasn't trained under another, amazing chef in the city, then at the very least, I had to prove to people that I was willing to learn and I was willing to outwork everyone. And then through the years, that always was a constant. However, the decisions I made had to be smarter ones, not just ones for the sake of doing them. To come back full circle to how we started this the last 3 years in COVID, it was the first time that that hard work had to be coupled with creative and smart thinking, because it wasn't so much like it was a matter of success or failure, survival or death in the landscape of being a small business owner.
Yep. Yep.
I was incredibly lucky as well. And luck and timing are huge,
right,
when it comes to being an entrepreneur.
I love this
but it's true though.
no, I love it.
Listen,
I love it. I can't stand these guys who predicted supposedly something that they couldn't predict. Like, guys, listen to this. This guy, Chef Matt Basile, he sold his business in one of the restaurants right before COVID. Let me tell you something else, guys. He did not have a crystal ball which said, sell your business because COVID's going to be around the corner and 7 months from now and your business is going to be destroyed. No, he just got fucking lucky. And you know what? All you entrepreneurs, stop telling all of us a story that you saw it coming and you knew it and everything else. Half of you just got fucking lucky. And you know what? Accept that. Be happy with this. Be grateful as that. And be kind with it. And maybe I got the percentage wrong, but that doesn't matter. But I can't stand these guys and girls who tell you that, afterwards it's like an antique. They have a great story about how they saw it coming. No, you didn't. You just were in the right moment with the right people at the right place. Now, that's about choices, right? Who do you surround yourself with? Who are the people you allow to influence you? And don't think just of the circle of 5. Think of the circle of 25 and multiple X, because that's an algorithm which builds further, right? The 5 have 5 more, which turns into 25. So you're probably influenced by 130 to 500 people if you do the 625 based on the 125. So that's really, I want to make sure that all the mathematicians listening.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The 500 is not the right number. So it's a 625. That's all the mathematics I can impress with. But the point is, that sounds like what you had, right? You had a girlfriend who was supportive. You had a network in a community who was supportive. You had family who kind of was there to catch you in the right moment. And you brought up a word which I love and talk a lot about it, empathy. Can we talk about that for a second?
I mean, empathy really shows that you have a human soul, right? It's what really separates us from AI. Yeah. It's what separates us from apps. It's what separates us. It allows us to make decisions consciously, with our brains and our hearts simultaneously.
Right.
And I think that is so. You cannot be an entrepreneur without having a little bit of empathy,
right?
Because, and not to be confused with sympathy. It's like which often they get confused. It's like no. It's very different. One is a true leadership quality. Is being empathetic, and you were talking about the crystal ball, and I am completely aligned with you there. I will say though, there were other factors happening that I was forced to listen to. This is not about COVID. This is about just my industry specific.
That's right.
The cost of doing business was on a huge trajectory at that time. We're talking like mid 2019, early 2019. It had never been more expensive to run my restaurant, and it never took so much to get back so little. And that is when I started to wrap my head around letting go of the restaurant. I still had my food truck, I still had my catering business, because on the flip side, those took a lot less energy and a lot less resources for more of a return. But now 2 years later, I've made even more changes. So it's like, I think it's totally okay with, I think, people see making changes as failures. And I think that is so wrong. I think you make changes that grow with not just your industry, but how you want your company to grow. And it's like, I used to have as many as 40 employees, and now I have 1. And we still get tons of business coming in. We're able to still work in the food space. We're able to collaborate in different cities. I'm able to not be so tied down to one thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I have more life. I have more.
I love
I get
this.
to see my girlfriend more, my
Yeah.
parents more, and my dog
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And I get to see friends. And
Yeah.
guess what? I went out for brunch on Saturday. I actually
Woo!
got to sit at a table, not be in the kitchen. But I appreciate all these things
Yeah.
so much
Right.
because of the, like, they talk about the 10,000 hours. I did that the first week, never mind. So it's like,
Yeah.
you appreciate these things because I was so invested in my business
I
for
love that.
years.
So I also know, and you shared this with me graciously. You and still today you advise businesses, particularly in the food and restaurant business, and owners and chefs. What are some of? I mean, having come through the tunnel of COVID now, and
Hmm.
kind of life is restarting in most states. I mean, in Europe, I just today saw on BBC and news again that Germany is falling down again and spiking again in the COVID cases, and who knows what that means. While Heathrow just took, as of today, the mask mandate off. Whatever that means for all of our future. Um, but what are you seeing now? If there's people listening who are in the restaurant and food business,
Hmm.
what are some of the things, not only that you've learned, but advice you would give? Two, three, four things going into the later part of 2022, looking at 2023 and further on. What do you see kind of drawing up? Is there? I'm going to ask you for the crystal ball.
Yeah. Well, listen, I can give you my perspective because a lot of the consulting I do for clients is usually in a creative space, in the
Yeah,
sense that I use my background in advertising to help them develop products and brands within the food
got it.
space. And then we
Yep,
we essentially I use my kitchen and food experience to flesh that out beyond just an
nice,
idea. So I
nice.
can develop the recipe for you. I can come into your kitchen and help you set up your operations. I can train your, so the first thing is you need to build a team. So often in the food business, we are just hiring available hands. And I think we need to do much better in the hiring process.
Mm,
Not necessarily being more selective, but really putting thought into building the environment that you want. Because these are the people that have decided to stay in this career because there's been so much departure, but B, you need them and they need you, and we need to work together as a team. That's what the whole team concept is, to achieve the goal. And I
yep,
think, if you work for me in the 11 years that I was an entrepreneur, there's going to be a part of that 11-year journey that you'll probably say I was the worst boss you've ever had. Then there was a larger part of that timeline where you probably say I was one of the best bosses you've ever had, because when you become an entrepreneur, you know how to run a business. No, you don't know how to run a business. You know how to have an idea. You know how to launch something, but you don't know how to manage people yet. That's a skill you develop over time. So really building a team is crucial. From a food service specific kind of mindset now, I think having streamlined operations is key. I think a lot of restaurants want to cater to everybody and they want to have these massive menus that do and I think we need to narrow our focus a lot more. It helps reduce the number of people you need to help operate, the amount of inventory you need. It just keeps your, like, if you want to be a burger place, be a burger place.
right, right.
If you want to be a salad place, be a salad place. I think it's when we try and cater to everybody that we get lost in that shuffle, and you don't become known for any one thing in particular.
I love
And then
this.
it's important, right? I
No,
think
I
it's
love.
super
Let me jump
important.
in there quickly, but I want to kind of frame this up also for people listening. If you're just an entrepreneur, maybe even not in the food business, I think what I heard you just say, Matt, is clarity, right? Because I
Yeah.
think one of the things we talk about in entrepreneurship in general, and years ago, Simon Sinek wrote in his book Clarity, Consistency, and Discipline, right? And I think that's what you were referring to: the why, the how, and the what, which is be clear how you're doing it, what you're doing and communicate that clearly, which is kind of the piece that you bring in and the combination between marketing and food. And I think it's so important because I feel sometimes some restaurants, they want to be everything to everybody.
Right.
And it's
And
unbelievable.
and they might do an okay job at that,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
you'll never be memorable.
Right.
And again, it took me years to communicate
Love that.
properly what I wanted. So by the end, in the last, the most recent team I just had, that was such a well bonded team. Everyone knew exactly what their roles were.
Yep.
I
Yep.
came into work, we all chatted, they all
Yep.
did their thing, and it was a machine.
I love it.
We were all overworked because there's
Yeah.
such a shortage of
Yep.
staff right now. And we were all trying to do our best given the
Right.
circumstances.
Right.
But I think, and keep in mind too, I'm not a health professional, so I can't really suggest what makes sense from a public health standpoint. I have my own belief system, but it's pretty much irrelevant in the grand
Yep.
scheme of
Yep.
of public health. But there are things that we need to know. Like, for example, does it really make sense to overcommit to something right now, given what we've all just seen happen two,
Mhm.
3 times? Like, you're in Chicago, correct?
I'm in Boston. I'm in
Boston. Sorry, you're in Boston. So I don't know how Boston's worked, but in Toronto, like we've seen Toronto's been hit with like 4 or 5 different separate lockdowns. That means the industry has hired, fired, hired, fired, hired, and fired on 4 separate occasions. And I'm not talking over a long period of time. I'm talking in a 2-year window.
Mm.
So you can imagine what that does to morale, for training, the operating cost to open things, close things. Like, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
very difficult.
Yeah.
So you need to
Yeah.
have patience. You need to have flexibility. You need to be able to also make a deal with your landlord, and you need to make sure that they're on your team,
Yeah.
because if you had a difficult landlord under good circumstances, I promise you probably had a disaster of a COVID scenario, because you needed a landlord that was willing to look long term with you. Because what are you
Mm.
going to do? You're going to kick the restaurant out and fill it with a new one? Well, guess what? We're not in a place right now where that's even really possible.
That's right.
And if you don't think it might happen again, you're sleeping. You missed the first 3 chapters of this scenario. So I think there really needs to be a unity between operators and landlords, and
I
because it's
love
so
that.
rare. And I've been to Boston quite a few times. I love Boston. I think Boston actually has one of the best metropolitan food truck kind of frameworks for a city like that. But there's, like, I found out how much a liquor license costs to
Mm.
put in a restaurant in Boston. It's like that alone could cripple you in these
Yep.
kind of times.
Yep.
So you need to have like solid foundational relationships that at least allow you that flexibility. Because
Yeah.
right
Yep.
now it's like, one of the biggest things that I kept saying was, and again, I can only speak specifically to where I am geographically,
Sure.
but it's like, well, if the restaurant that sits in these walls is not allowed to make any revenue, or they're only allowed to make 10% of what they normally would make, yet the expectation is they're paying 100% of their rent,
Right. Right.
100% of their utilities,
Right.
not
Right.
to mention they have, so there were subsidy programs that came out eventually, but like it was too late for a lot of places, and a lot of really good
Yeah.
restaurants were victims of COVID, unfortunately.
Yeah, I remember seeing that list. I'm sure you saw the same list as well. I think it was in the New York Times about all the old places in New York alone which shut down. I mean, some of them have then debated because Florida was a little bit of different setup to move down to Miami and some of those areas and
Mm-hmm.
open up the same, the
Mm-hmm.
same version of marketing slash restaurant concept down there. But it was unbelievable. Everything from Monkey Bar to you name it in New York was suddenly closing about 2 years ago, and it's just it was. But I mean, when you think about restaurants who've been in the city as institutions, and
Sure.
they got hit by probably certainly with some of the costs that you alluded to, which started happening in 2019, and personnel costs, et cetera, wages are changing. I mean, That's just all things we don't talk about, but we got to consider in lifestyle. And I mean,
Sure.
now we're at the highest point of inflation ever. And
Food has never cost more than it does right now. The cost
that's
of
right.
food, and again, it is so much. It's even so much more expensive here in
Mm,
Canada than it is in the United States for no other reason than population density. Like we just do not
yeah.
have. We do not have the same. I was in Florida when we first spoke, and I
Yeah.
was at Costco. I couldn't believe the deal I was getting down there, right? And forget about the taxes. Like that's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about the cost of goods. Like even with the dollar exchange rate, it was so much cheaper for me to be down in Florida doing recipe testing down there than it was here. Like, so
Hmm.
it's like I'll sell a cheeseburger for $12 and I'm paying someone $25 to make that $12 cheeseburger, an hour. And it's like, then you have customers giving you grief, being like, well, I can make it for cheaper at home. And then you honestly just go, honestly, go for it then. Like, I don't even know what to tell
Yeah.
you. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we can get into, I mean, people often forget, and this is I know this is supposed to be an entrepreneurial talk, but I'm just talking to someone now. I'm talking to people now who like going to restaurants, but have this like need to just give them grief for price
Listen, guys.
gouging.
This is important. I
So,
talk about these people all the time. You know who you are.
okay.
Listen.
So please keep in mind that restaurants and the food business is a for-profit industry, and it is not something that is meant to be break even. And the average restaurant, at least in Canadian standards, if you're in a 2 to 4% profit margin, you're doing well.
Hmm.
That means for every uh, 2 million you make in revenue, you're bringing home 40 grand. Is that even right? No. Is that right?
Yeah,
Is my
that
math
sounds
right?
about right. Yeah. Well,
Right?
not exactly. So, I mean, if you're talking 2 to 3%, so you're exactly there, like between $40,000 and $60,000.
There you go. So you are under the average salary per year, and that is if you're doing it well. So think about how many haven't been doing it well for so long. And I mean, I've been doing this 11 years. I've only in the last 2 to 3 years started taking a regular paycheck every
Hmm.
2 weeks. And
So, it's interesting.
yeah,
I think that the word which comes to mind again is what you said earlier, and I think it's so important in any business where we transact amongst people as empathy, right? And I think you outlined it with the relationships that we need to build as entrepreneurs with our landlords. If we have a physical business location, I think in
mm-hmm,
restaurants that's always probably one of the most important pieces. And then also I think how do you take care of your staff? And what's like you said, when I hear you say you're paying somebody $25 an hour, that's that's not outrageous, that's not cheap, but it's also not where somebody who makes $25 an hour lives the luxury life either.
a
And so
thousand
I think,
percent. Yeah, and when I say that, it's not because I'm not saying I don't think people deserve $25 an hour. I think they deserve everything. I think people deserve what they deserve. Um, but we saw a lot of line cooks leave the food business to go to construction because they
mm,
could, instead of making $25 an hour, they were able to make $28 an hour. But let me tell you something: the average construction company is pulling in more than $1 to $2 million in revenue a year. So it's like
yeah,
you're playing in different worlds. Like
right,
for
right,
example, you take a Walmart, and not to throw Walmart under the bus. You take a Walmart. It's like okay, you can actually, like, if you were to think about it like a per capita basis and dollar to dollar for dollar, dollar in, dollar out, you could actually afford to pay people 100 grand a year working at your store. If we're talking about the millions and millions
right,
and
right,
millions
right, right, right.
of not revenue, profit that you do, yearly, right?
Yep,
So
yep,
how does a small business compete with that?
yeah,
How does a small business compete with that?
right.
So I think it takes, listen, you have to have grit. You have to really know where you want to spend your energy. And I know full well that I have made changes and decisions that I almost have COVID to thank for because I am now working smarter than I've ever worked in my 11 years. And I actually get a little bit of balance as a result of it.
Right. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, COVID is over. You've had your journey now for almost a dozen years, and you're in a good spot. Your energy seems you're in check. What's next?
Yeah, what's next? Well, I guess I don't know. Is COVID really over? Will COVID ever really be over?
No, but I think it's
but I know
it
what you
goes
mean.
it goes back to the attitude. It's like I think there comes the point where we
Yeah,
just got to say, you know what, this is now this is one of the things we got to deal with, which is like the flu and a headache and whatever else it may be,
I think we're
and
in the
everybody.
management phase.
That's
Yeah,
right, and
yeah,
everybody kind of needs to take ownership for themselves. While at the same time, I mean, the example you just made earlier, you got to hire and fire, hire and fire, hire and fire, which is not about you want to fire people, but it's because it's
no,
survival, and it's unfortunately, you set people free to hopefully make a better living somewhere else while you can't pay them. In the example that you outlined with the shutdowns. Um, so now you're trying to hire people back, and people saying, "Well, I don't know if I want to do this again," right? And it's not that
hmm
benefit plans in a restaurant are outrageously wonderful either, which is why a lot of people go to construction, they go to unions, they go somewhere else,
hmm
which is where if they then join the union, I don't know what the exact union track is, but I've heard it a couple of times now. 3-4 years later, suddenly you're making $65 an hour, and you get a free health plan. Um, and so I think that's there's a lot of people think about these things as well. But so next version of Matt, what's on the horizon? Give us. I know you can't fully talk about it. So guys, this is not us being mysterious. This is something where he's launching a brand new thing. He's your partner in the company. You're the guy in the front line, and you're building something new. What can you tell us about it? And what's maybe talk us through what got you there,
Sure.
and the evolution of Matt into this new venture.
Well, I think that's a great way to kind of frame it, Stefan. So thank you. So it is a new product. I am one of three kind of partners in this project. I was approached a year and a half ago to be kind of a spokesperson for the launch of this thing, but it didn't exist yet. So what I said was like, listen, let's just have a little get together and talk about it. And I will give you my advice and my perspective, how I feel, and then we can go from there. And we had about a 2 hour discovery where we just we discussed everything about this unique project. And at the end of it, the two founding partners said, "Well, would you like to join us?" And I said, "A million percent, let's do it." So everyone involved in this is an entrepreneur from their own, with their own respects. I'm the
Mhm.
only one that's within the food business, so this product is in the food business. Now it's different because it's not food service.
Yep.
However, there's been so much of my last 10, 11 years that comes to play into this new role.
Right.
However, there's also a lot that I'm learning simultaneously.
Right.
The relationships I've built in the last decade have really helped open doors for this project, and I think it'll be within the space. And if I say what space it's in, it gives it away. But it's something that anyone can use. It allows me to connect with literally anybody around the world with regards to showing people how to cook the way or have a relationship with food the way that I relate to food. So it really actually opens up the community door, and it really brings people into where my mindset's at. And it's allowed me to develop primary products and secondary products and really focus on where my skill sets are. I
So
will give
I
you
guys, I have no idea what this thing is, but here's what I just made up about it. It's a virtual food truck which connects
yeah.
to Alexa, where there is an app that sends me all the ingredients I need at the right time. I have no idea, guys, what this thing
No,
is.
I
But I'll love it. So no, I mean, first off, congratulations. I mean, it sounds like you're really excited about it. Sounds like you guys have worked on that for a long time, which is awesome. And it sounds like that's something where I honestly I have no idea where this even what this even is. I have no idea. I promise you guys, don't text me on my Instagram or on Raw Rants podcast, because we don't know. We honestly don't know. But here's the question, Ahmed. When is this thing coming out? Is there an anticipated launch date? But more importantly, if people want to connect with Matt and Chef Matt Basile, how do we connect with you? Where do people find you?
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to hear from you also in the end here, the wise word of the chef to all the entrepreneurs and the chef entrepreneurs. What's some of the 1-2 things that have been the biggest lessons maybe in life, but most certainly in business for you that you can share with us?
Okay, so I'll start with the easiest one first. You can reach me at Chef Matt Basile on all of our kind of social networks. If you go to my website, chefmattbasile.com, you can then connect with me on Instagram. That's where I tend to be the most kind of vocal. You can connect with us on YouTube. Again, Chef Matt Basile. On TikTok, again, Chef Matt Basile. So those are all the places that you can reach out to me from a social kind of engagement standpoint. As far as advice, man, there's so much. So problem solving is probably your best asset you could ever bring to the table. If you don't come with me with problems, come to me with solutions, please, because you need to be able to solve problems on the fly. My grandfather, my nono, his words to me were always work hard and be smart. And I think it's so important to listen to both sides of that. Have a work ethic, but choose an intelligent way to use that energy, because otherwise you're just wasting it. And then what was the last question you said about when's it launch? Oh, so the new product launch. So the reason why I can't really talk about it is because there are other partners, and it's contingent on a lot of proprietary kind of engineering right now. So we're hoping that the prototype is in our hands in the next few months. Realistically, I would love to see this ready for the Christmas season of 2022. No promises, but my goal is Christmas season.
So, guys, if you're listening, we're going to have Chef Matt back then in Christmas. He's going to get to pitch the new product on Raw Rants. That's a promise. That's an invitation back.
Deal.
That's a deal. Guys, when you hear this music and you know the title of this music, that sound is always Out of Time. So today with us, and you see him sitting right here, was Chef Matt Basile. Today we talked a little bit about self-reflection. We talked about his pivotal moment in the elevator when he saw all over him blue suits, brown shoes, and white shirts. And he said, I got to get the hell out of here and be an entrepreneur. One of the things he really emphasized with us, and thank you for that, Matt, was intentionality, right? When you build a team, be intentional about it. Streamline your operations and don't try to be everything for everybody. In Germany, we have a saying, don't be everybody's Dackel, which is Dackel is a Dachshund. And the translation is, jedermanns Liebling is jedermanns Dackel. Translation, everybody's darling is everybody's Dachshund, which means don't be that person. We talked about authenticity. And if you quit, practice to quit. And it'll be just delicious when you do it. And make sure you got some people supporting you as well. And the last thing is, go check Matt out. He's on Instagram, and you find him all over the social media at Chef Matt Basile. So it's ChefMattBasile.com is his website. And from there, you can dive into all his other stuff. And guys, when we have this music, there's only one thing left. And that is Chef Matt Basile and Stefan.
Thank you so much.
And we're out.
I can see it in